Here we go. Say hi to your friends that aren't here today. Okay. Okay, no music. Y'all were not helpful. Say you're sorry. Okay, I want to share my screen, and I have a couple of questions for you guys before we really get started. First of all, you're going to see yourselves on my screen, no? Okay, so you can see week 6 module, right? So I realized last week that you probably weren't aware that you needed to comment on the storytelling project, right? So I was kind, and I sent out a message on Sunday, and I said, hey everyone, comment on storytelling. And y'all didn't do it. So talk to me about, do you get the announcements when I send out announcements? So I've got no and I've got yes. Who gets the announcements specifically? Like, so Sabrina, you get a notification or something that I sent an announcement?
Yeah, it goes to my email, and I have the Canvas app on my phone, so it pops up on there too. It says that you like left a message or an announcement or something like that. And
Okay.
so sometimes I read it right away, sometimes I don't.
You don't have to read it right away. Just know that sometimes I say important things.
Yeah.
Like, please do this. So who doesn't get the announcements? We're all good. If you're not getting announcements, find a peer or someone and get them to help you set it up, or call Canvas, because I realized that was going to happen before it happened, which is pretty good for me, right?
Professor?
Yes, Lexi.
I got the one that you sent about Nearpod, the video not working, but
Yeah.
I didn't get anything
before that
about the learning disability, like the presentation.
So maybe it has to do with the titles. So weekly activities is what I called it. Do you see that one? Remember, your weekly activities are due tonight. Please make sure. The reason I did that was because I clicked onto the storytelling discussion board and realized there was like 2 comments. And I was like, holy moly, let me do something about this. So I don't know why you would not get it. Bridget?
I think there's like an option if you go to like the Canvas app or something, or the website. If you like go to your profile, I think you can like adjust the settings so that you get emails when like someone makes an announcement or something.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You guys should check on that. Okay, so let's go back and talk about this week. So I make sure that everything's covered. Sometimes I think it's really fun, I've told you guys this before, to use all these different forms of technology, but somehow I'm afraid that some things are getting lost in the mix with my funness, right? And I don't want that to happen. So, and if you miss something and I email you that you've missed it, or I put a note in there, then you should email me, or do it and then email me, because I'll give you credit as long as you get it done. Remember that my goal is for you guys to learn, right? Okay, so let's look at where we are. Why is the top of my head cut off? Technology makes me old. Okay, so we are at week 6, right? So we click on week 6, and you read all this wonderful stuff that I write to you, right? Every week, because sometimes I change it. You must read this, because I realize that you guys probably aren't reading this. Based on our conversation last week, it appears that some of you do not start here. So start here. So you're going to log in. It tells you things you already know. And I think that's why you're scanning, but be careful because sometimes I add stuff. Maybe I should bold if it says something new and different, right? Like here, I will hold class via Zoom on Tuesday. That was there last week. And remember, people said I didn't notify them. But as soon as this came out on Sunday night, it said that. So you got to read. Okay. So you're going to read chapter 6. You're going to log into the classroom above and explore the icons. For you guys, you can look at the Nearpod app. You don't have to because we're going to go through it together, right? But what we don't finish, you have to do. You have to make sure you've done all the activities in Nearpod. The movie's optional. Anyone watch the movie last week? No. It was really good. Erin.
The movie last week was Wonder, right?
Yeah.
I didn't watch it last week, but I watched it before.
You watched
It's
it
really
before.
good.
I hadn't seen it, and when I watched it, it was so good. So if you want a feel-good show, you should watch Wonder. That was a good one. And check all icons for all activities and attend class. So we'll go up here, we'll click on this. So there were some comments about, and I did it too, looking at the earlier weeks when I was just building one slide on top of the other slides for the classroom. So I've changed that. Just week 6 all by itself. So there is Nearpod. There is YouTube. I think it's a speaker. See this, and I don't do this. So this YouTube is not on this list, right? So if you just look at the classroom list, it probably doesn't have this on there. But you still want to watch it because you want to learn everything you could possibly learn, right? So maybe I'll randomly pull a test question out of there. Probably not, but you should listen to it. Jasmine.
I just wanted to remind you that my ADHD project group is going to present today. But I also have a question. I see that the movie is How to Train Your Dragon. Is there anything in it that's related to special ed? Because I've seen it many times, but I can't think of anything.
So watch it and think about it. Think about what we talk about today.
Okay.
And what you read about. Or Google it and it will tell you. Don't we love Google? It's really interesting. Supposedly the main character, whose name is, what's the little boy's name?
Hiccup.
Hiccup. The little boy's name is Hiccup. It has ADHD. So after we talk this week, watch it and think about it. Yeah, that's a great thing. This is what does this cute little icon take you to? Drum roll. What did everyone forget to do last week?
Is it the discussion board?
Yeah, it's the discussion board for the storytelling. So, so this is going to be interesting because they're going to present today, and I'm going to somehow cut the video and post it for you. Nonetheless, you have to go in and comment. Mackenzie.
So my group also was due today for ADHD.
Okay.
But for some reason, so we made a video and I emailed it to you yesterday. But for some reason, I was trying to comment the movie on Canvas and it wasn't letting me. It said it was uploading. And then it would say saving reply, but then it would never go through. I would refresh the page and it wouldn't go through. So I emailed it to you, at your GSE email. I wasn't really sure what else to try because all of my group members tried posting it as well. So I wasn't sure what we should have done.
Okay, so let me see if I have something blocked. And then what you should do is remind me so that I will upload it. Let me just see if I can make that happen. So I should quit sharing, right? So y'all don't see my email.
I'm not sure if it was like maybe because of like the file size or something, like, and my laptop just wasn't like working with Canvas. I don't really know what it was about, but I just figured I would let you know because I wasn't sure if you got me or not.
So interestingly enough, I'm really struggling to put the weekly videos up too for that reason. It's like that's why I put it on YouTube last week, right? Because, and then I couldn't even connect that. So I've always said that we're going to blow up. Kenzie, I just forgot how to spell your name. We're going to blow up the cloud. I think we've done it. All right. So you attached it. Oh, I need access. So you're going to have to go in and give me access to it.
Okay.
Do that now. Let's see if we can get it up. Sorry, you guys. If you'd have played music, we could be doing this with music playing. The other thing you can, well, probably not.
I've got a song if you actually want to play music.
Play it.
Okay, I think I share it with you now.
I think I got it. Yep. Play some music while I do then. Who's playing? It's Bree. That's what I thought.
Can you hear that? Okay.
A little bit. Better.
Is this from a movie?
It's Eric Whitaker.
Oh, I thought it's
What?
The piece is called October. It's by Eric Whitaker, who's a choral composer, but he wrote this for wind ensemble, and I thought it was fitting because it's October now.
Oh, that's awesome. It's really pretty. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That was really pretty.
It's one of my favorite pieces. It's what kind of sparked my interest in music and eventually becoming a music education major.
Awesome. All right. So I have it's saving reply. Is that what it did to you guys too?
Yeah.
The other thing you could do is, since it's a Google document, you could like make open access, which is what I do with you guys. When I send the classroom, I click down and somehow I say public access, and you could just put the link in here if we can't get it to upload.
Yeah, I think I might try and upload it to YouTube, like you said you do with the Zooms, and then see if I can just copy and paste the link and comment that so that you guys can see it.
That's a good idea. Excellent idea. I mean, we'll leave it like that and see what happens, but okay, so let's talk about ADHD. That's probably the best thing we're going to do today, this week. So this is Nearpod. You can see it? Yes? See my screen? Give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. Thank you very much. All right. I don't know what was wrong with the poor video. That's sad. The problem is if I would have changed, I may add the video, but you're okay if you don't watch it. The problem is if I change it after I've sent the link to you guys, then it messes up the link. So I couldn't even go back and fix it. So let's start with the quiz. Do you have access to the quiz? See what happens. Share me. Everyone enter, and let's look at the questions. All right, ready? So the first question is, what are 2 of the 13 categories of special education that we have discussed so far? Tell me the answers.
Speech and language impairments and learning disabilities.
Good job. Speech and language impairments and learning disabilities. What's the name of special ed law?
IDEA.
Which guarantees students the right to a
Free and appropriate public education.
in the
Least
restrictive environment.
Good job. If I don't teach you anything else, you got that right. According to IDEIA, learning disabilities can be diagnosed through which techniques? What are the 2 techniques to diagnose a learning disability?
Response to intervention and the discrepancy model.
Excellent. Response to intervention and the discrepancy model. The IQ discrepancy model. What three-tier system of support is utilized for behavior? Is it PBIS or is it response to intervention?
PBIS.
PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. Good job. All right, excellent. You like my little guy? Not this little guy, the little bouncy guy. He's cute, right? It's appropriate for ADHD. So this is a poem that was written in the 1840s. So we talk about ADHD being a new thing, and people talk about ADHD being overdiagnosed. And I raised 2 children with severe ADHD and had many people tell me in the great state of Texas that they just need their butts whipped, right? Just make him sit down. The problem is you don't make him mind, blah, 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 blah. So it's always reassuring to read a poem from the 1840s that describes my children. So someone read out loud for me. Who wants to read it? Lexi, read it to us.
Let me see if Philip can be a little gentleman. Let me see if he is able to sit still for once at table. Thus spoke in earnest tone the father to his son, and the mother looked very grave to see Philip so misbehave. But Philip, he did not mind his father, who was so kind. He wriggled and giggled, and then, I declare, swung backwards and forward and tilted his chair, just like any rocking horse. Philip, I am getting cross.
That's only part of it. Where do you think that it ends, the poem? What do you think happens in the end? The whole tablecloth lands on the floor with all the food, right? So have you ever met anybody that acted like that? You ever seen a child act like that? Is it annoying? A little bit. It's funny because my children both had ADHD, and my 2 oldest. And I suppose maybe I do. Do you ever count how many times I rock in the chair? The hyperactivity is supposed to fade. I think it forgot to with me. But when I married my husband, the boys were 12 and 7. This is funny to tell these stories with them in the house with me, you guys. I usually tell these stories in a classroom at Rutgers, right? And so he was in the Army and believed that things should be done structured. And yeah, that's when I realized that my children were not quite calm because it looks different from that perspective, right? But they were what they were, and we had a lot of fun. Let's just admit that. So yes, so Fidgety Phil probably had ADHD. So the first person that really started documenting characteristics of ADHD was George Steele in 1902. And then it continued in 1919. Kurt Goldstein identified behaviors in soldiers, check that out, with traumatic brain injuries that looked like the same symptoms of ADHD. In 1937, Alfred Strauss and Heinz Werner talked about the fact that children with symptoms of ADHD never actually developed strong skills in academic areas, and they called it Strauss syndrome. So let's back up a minute. Is ADHD one of the 13 characteristics that we're going to talk about, or that are part of the IDEA? Erin, is it?
No, it's not. It's under a different category, like other health impairments or something.
Exactly. So ADHD was not part of IDEA. It's not one of the 13 characteristics. And typically students prior to 1997 with ADHD got services through Section 504. Remember we talked about Section 504? It's kind of an umbrella over special ed and other categories. But in 1997, Congress wrote, or someone wrote, a memorandum of understanding that said ADHD falls under other health impaired. And so we'll talk about what that looks like and why they did that. Let's watch a movie.
Tonight's Horizon takes a different approach, one we've never taken before.
Can you hear it?
This program looks at a much misunderstood neurological condition. It's a condition that some people do not even believe exists.
You just get a feeling that they're sort of looking at you in an odd way.
Horizon spent 6 months with 2 families learning to live with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity.
That was my
disorder.
child.
This
Not literally,
is
but
what
yeah.
it's really like.
James! I'm really gonna lose my temper in a minute.
It's also my grandchildren, by the way.
I'm hoping that the positive side of their ADHD is going to take them forward.
I wouldn't want to know her because it's just who I am. Won't be me.
Exactly.
It's Saturday morning in Wigan. Brian and Eleanor Hill are taking their 2 sons, Lewis, who's 2.5, and Liam, who's 5, into town shopping. Liam is not like other children.
Liam, just wait for the door to open up. Stand here.
Come here. Don't you do it. Come here.
I could make this
Come
video.
here. Tie up that.
Ryan, Lewis is coming.
I don't like this.
Liam, there's cars coming. Straight here now.
My heart's just stopped beating then.
Have you looked up?
Because that was frightening when you went into there.
Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Liam.
Liam is fearless and impulsive. Brian and Eleanor know that if he sees something across the road, he won't think twice about running towards it, regardless of traffic.
Liam, not too far in front, please. Come here. This time I've told you, Liam. If I have to keep telling you the same things, you do not go on the ride. Hold my hand. I'm standing here and I'm not moving until you hold my hand. 1, 2, hold my hand. We'll hold the pram then. Thank you. One or the other.
He also rarely does what he is told.
Second time I've told you, Liam. No. I want you to hold the hand because it's very busy and we can get lost. Hold the pram. No. Right. I'll tell you one more time, don't go on the ride. We've not even got into Wigan, Liam. Okay? I don't want to.
What has she said twice that caught your attention? If I tell you, what did she say? If I tell you one more time. The problem is that she's now said it twice. Keep listening.
I want him to hold the pram. That's a simple thing. Liam, not too far in front, please.
Liam is constantly on the go, and he never stays with anything for long.
It's horrendous. There's no way you could possibly come shopping with the 2 of them. No, very, very rarely we come to shop.
No matter how many times Brian and Eleanor tell him not to, Liam will do the same thing over and over again.
Come here now. Come here. Right, me. That's really frightening me. get him. He straight to knock on his Liam, be quiet. I can get real mad.
Liam's behaviour puts enormous strain on the whole family. Last year, Eleanor reached crisis point.
Your nerves can only stand so much, and I think that's what happened really last year. It was like my body just said, enough's enough, really.
Been in the rain, likes to make think Dominic. Do you like it too?
I got so low. Obviously, I went to the doctors. The school got involved then. And then it suddenly became, it started taking us serious.
Leo, I don't want it to be cold. No, you need it on because it'll be cold. I don't want it to be cold. Now listen, now, the rules are, you don't go to them gates, okay? You don't go anywhere apart from that allotment without telling me and checking with me first. Do you understand? Listen. Yeah, I can. Say yes for me, I understand. Right, well, Daddy's going to come round with you just to check.
Liam, be careful up there, kid.
Talk to me about Liam. What did you see?
He reminds me of a kid I used to babysit.
You remind you of a kid you used to babysit.
I had to stop working there because it was like too much of a strain on me. As a 15.
Young.
Yeah, no, I was too young to be dealing with her, and she, oh my God, it was actually a mess.
So the behaviors were similar?
Yeah, like she would run away and I wouldn't find her, and it was very stressful. Like one time I had to pick her up from horseback riding and she left with another family and like didn't tell me. Nobody told me anything, and oh my God, it was like the worst day of my life.
Wow. So how did she make you feel?
Frustrated,
Frustrated,
overwhelmed, annoyed, mad, lots of things.
Good. Those are things to think about. Yeah. Anyone else? What else did you see about Liam?
I recognize a lot of the same behaviors that like my younger sister exhibits because she also has ADHD. She's 9.
Yeah.
And she went through like tier 2 intervention and everything at school. So like a lot of like the impulsivity that Liam was like expressing, I see it like now that I watched that, like I'm recognizing like how that is a big part of like what happens with my sister.
Exactly. So, yeah. What happens with the impulsivity? What could happen? Like where I stopped the video. I think that's the scariest thing. Of course, it's not going to show you where I stopped it, but he was on top of a house, a play thing, right? So kids, what do you think that means for kids with ADHD? Lexi. Sorry. Lexi. You're muted. I'm so glad we don't live in this world.
The kids that I know with ADHD like are like Liam. They have like no fear. Like my one cousin, his name is Liam too. He has ADHD. So watching this, I was like, yeah, sounds about right. When I babysit him, I have to be really careful if I have like the oven or the stove on, because sometimes he'll just like go for it because he has no fear and he's just like wants to try everything. So.
Now that impulsivity, right? You just do what you think. You don't really think. You act before you think, right? So yes, when you look at the things that Liam did, and his mom's really afraid, right? So what about mom and dad's relationship? What was happening there? Erin?
Dad kind of seemed to take like a back seat and let mom do all the talking. Like you asked earlier what mom kept saying, and it's something that we use frequently at my summer camp job with kids. Tell them like, if I have to tell you again, you won't get to do such and such. Mm-hmm. And she kept telling him that if he kept running away, that he wouldn't get to go on a ride.
Right.
Which didn't work. And Dad just stood there kind of quiet.
Yeah. And then when they were at the car, they started fighting or arguing with each other, right? Because your stress level goes up. And so then all of a sudden you're in this relationship and yeah. So there's all kinds of side effects of having children with ADHD. So what are the characteristics? We just talked about them, right? So inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. Inattention is an interesting thing because we talk about kids being distracted, so they're easily distracted. But in order to pay attention, what do you have to do first?
Get their attention.
You have to pay attention. So you have to initiate your attention to that task. So it's not only maintaining, it's you have to start paying attention, and then you have to maintain attention. And kids with ADHD really struggle. So if I give you a set of 5 directions and you're struggling with paying attention, are you likely to hear all 5 of them? No. So they really struggle to pay attention, to follow directions. Sometimes they don't even hear the first direction, right? Or remember it when they get home, for example, to do homework. They have difficulty in changing tasks. So that's the other thing that you'll notice, which is interesting. With kids with ADHD, sometimes it looks like hyper-focus because they struggle from moving from one task to the next. Organization is my favorite area of impairment. And it's what I do research on. I never dreamed that that's where I would end up with my line of research, being on accommodations, interventions for kids with ADHD with a focus on skills that they have to function in a classroom. So one of those skills that's really important to me is organization. So if you open the binder of a child with ADHD, what does it look like? Anybody ever tried that? No. It looks like it's going to explode. I have pictures I can show you where I've taken pictures of binders and book bags. So they open it and stuff just pops out. They don't take the time to put their papers in the 3 rings. There's typically in a backpack of a kid with ADHD, you'll find yesterday's lunch, sometimes a lunch from a month ago, all kinds of things. So talk to me about, if I can't organize my materials, I can't organize my binder, my book bag, what does that do to my grades, my academic performance? Why do I need to be organized? Think about it.
You'll get better grades if
Why?
you are organized.
Why?
I mean, I'm gonna be like talking about it, or well, not me, but like one of my group members will be talking about it in the presentation. So I don't know if you'll want me to talk about it now or later.
Tell me a couple of things about why it's important to be organized.
I mean, the example in the book that we read was that Blake, the main character, who wrote the book, he got I think a C on his math final because he didn't like ask for like extra paper to do his work on, so like all of his work and steps of the problems he was solving was like really disorganized, and he made like really small mistakes. Okay. He knew like the hard stuff that he was being tested on, but like the easy stuff, like simple addition, subtractions, things like that, like he got messed up with some of them because he was just like his work was disorganized.
Yeah. So so my middle child, James, who I always say is a poster child for ADHD, I realized in math that he was not lining, he was moving so fast that he wouldn't line the numbers up for like addition, right? And he was so smart, but he kept making these silly mistakes. And finally it dawned on me he was just writing all over the place. So I would make him write in graph paper and put his numbers in the little boxes, which he hated, but it helped line it up, right? The other thing is, if I'm not organized, I don't get home with the materials I need. I don't have what I need. I can't tell you how many times I put a kid in the car and drove back to the school. Thank God for janitors who were cleaning schools, because we would go in, open the locker, get the book, get the homework, just everything. So if you don't get home with your materials, then you're not going to get back to school with your homework. But if you think about, do a task analysis of what it takes to do homework when you're in middle school. You have to write your homework down, or at least know what it is. You have to get home with all of the materials from more than one class. You have to be able to find all of those materials in a binder that looks horrible. You have to sit and pay attention to do it. Then you have to put it back in the binder, right? And you have to get back to school with it. There are so many places for error in that whole process that kids with ADHD really struggle. So yeah, so there's tons of things in that where there can be mistakes. The hyperactivity, we pretty much know what that looks like, right? We know when kids get to around middle school, typically hyperactivity starts to wane, or it becomes more about thoughts instead of their bodies. So their thoughts race, or they zone out and they think about a million different things, right? As opposed to all the things that I continue to do at my very young age. Impulsivity is what we've talked about so far. So when you're a classroom teacher, what characteristic, what behavior are you going to see that is going to make, what impulsive behavior do you think you will see the most? There we go. Out of a kid with ADHD. Sabrina.
Oh, sorry. Calling out.
Calling out, exactly. And you're going to have to decide as a classroom teacher, is it important to you for kids to raise their hands? And if it's important, then you're going to have to teach that skill, especially the kids with ADHD, because they're going to be the first ones. You ask me a question, I know it, I'm going to answer it. Poof. In fact, I think I still do that. I worry about that sometimes. Interrupt. They constantly interrupt conversations. Yeah. Make impulsive decisions. Kids with ADHD are more likely to engage in risk-taking behavior, so they get hurt more often. A friend of mine did a study that was really cool with teenagers that were driving. So if you think about what impulsivity can do to you when you're driving, that was fun. Yeah. So all of that results in problems with academic performance. So the disorganization, I kind of went through that whole thing, or we talked a little bit about two different situations where it impacts kids' performance. Forgetfulness, yep, play that into what academic performance looks like, and problem studying. Interestingly, kids with ADHD have problems with social behavior. Why do you think that is? Have you ever had a friend that had ADHD and found some of their behaviors annoying? Good, Sabrina, tell me one.
Well, my boyfriend has ADHD.
Okay.
This is very near to my heart. When he's driving, he doesn't look at the road. He looks everywhere except for the road, and it's very stressful for me, and I often find myself having to remind him of like a red light or like a car in another lane, and I just fear my life sometimes.
There you go. So if he wasn't your boyfriend, is that somebody you would want to hang out with a lot?
I don't know. I mean, it keeps me alert as a passenger. He's never like hit anybody or anything. Like, he's very good at driving. It's
right.
Just sometimes, I don't know.
You're right. It can be scary.
Sometimes it is a little scary.
Mm-hmm. My oldest child, Clint, is almost 40. That's unbelievable. Maybe he's 36. I don't know. To ride in a car with him is just beyond frightening. I mean, and he gets mad if you correct him. So you're trying to, I don't know, you pray a lot, right? So yeah. What else do people with ADHD do that might be a problem with friends?
I have another one. They talk about things that they're interested in and don't really like, well, I don't know if this is an ADHD thing, but it's what I've noticed. They talk about things that they are really intrigued by, and then it's hard to like change the subject from that, and once they do, they like completely lose interest.
Yeah, so that's the inattention part. That's excellent. So I'm going to tell you everything that I think is really great and fun, and then I don't really want to listen to you talk about what you have to say, because that's boring to me. So I'm going to zone out and not pay attention. So all of those things. The interrupting component is big. So if you're in a group, and these are things that we really have to work with kids with ADHD on, right? So if you're doing a group project and you're all at a table, imagine you're in middle school and you're all at our table and you're all doing this group project, and this kid is constantly telling you his ideas and interrupting everything you say. The middle school kids aren't going to tend to want to be around this kid, right? So the social behaviors start interrupting. The other thing that happens sometimes is that kids with ADHD can withdraw, and they can be kind of just, especially kids that don't have hyperactivity, but more just inattention. So they're just zoning out. And so that interferes with friendships, right? I always like to talk about the positive characteristics. I have a colleague that tells me that I'm being unrealistic, but I think it's important. So kids with ADHD tend to be more intuitive. I think that's because, and this is all just me, this part, because they are always paying attention to things around you. So they're thinking about human behavior. I can tell you what the people at the table beside me when we go out to eat are talking about, but maybe not the conversation at our table. Depends on what's more fun. They tend to be more emotionally aware, again, because they're looking, sometimes more creative. Exuberance is a positive characteristic. That would be the same thing as hyperactivity, maybe, right? Or excitement for something. So those are all characteristics of ADHD. At least one child in every classroom. There tends to be at least one child in every classroom with ADHD. So when you teach, you're going to meet these children. So think about an adult with ADHD, because we know that almost half of children with ADHD have ADHD as an adult. So what do you think this looks like in adulthood? Driving. It looks that way. What else does it look like? I mean, you're no longer in class. No one's making you sit still. No one's making you pay attention to things, are they?
I mean, I feel like at a desk job, it would be really hard as an adult with ADHD. Like, yeah, I feel like they need to be doing something that involves like their hands and like something to pay attention to aside from like a computer screen and like crunching numbers. Something they want to pay attention to. Yeah. So it's really hard for a person with ADHD to do monotonous tasks like crunching numbers. What do you think it looks like well, we talked some already about a relationship. What about a marriage? What does it look like? Or might look like?
A whole lot of reminding somebody to do things. A lot of like forgetfulness, and I'm just speaking on my own relationship, but
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that can be annoying. I think both of my boys are married, and it's amazing because they found very organized people to marry, which is a wonderful thing. But I watch it happen. I mean, put this up. Where's this? And I guess I did too. But yeah, it's a lot of reminding. It's a lot of organizing for them, those kinds of things. Yeah, it's interesting. So those are all things that we have to think about as educators, because it's really our job to prepare kids for adulthood, right? It's above and beyond. We're going to teach them, I don't know, calculus. It's our job to make sure they're going to be functioning adults. So we have to think about how to teach these skills. Okay, I'm going to stop here and let you guys do your presentation. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to unshare my screen, right? Fine. There it is. This is weird.
Professor.
There it is. Yes, ma'am.
When we go to comment on this one, since we're watching it live,
yeah,
like, do we comment on this week? I'm confused.
Me too. Don't feel that. I thought about that a minute ago. So yes, you will. Let me close all of this so I can think about what I'm telling you. This is the other one, huh? So my thought is, yes, you will comment on what you saw live. In the discussion board of both of them. It seems a little repetitive because we're going to comment on it when we're through here today. But so just a couple of sentences so I can see that you were here and that you watched it. Right, and discussion boards, you guys, you know, I try not to use a lot of discussion boards because the reason we have discussion boards is because it's supposed to be a discussion. So when I teach, I tend to be very discussion based, right? I want you guys to talk to me, and it's really fun when we're having long conversations as opposed to me talking at you. So that's what a discussion board is supposed to mimic. I have complaints about that, and you do too, right? So just make a comment to let me know that you were there or that you've seen it. Okay. Okay. Who's presenting? Oh, first I got to give you access, correct? Whoever's going in and out of my house needs to quit. Oh. There we go. You should be able to share now, right? And what is this going to look like? Do you need to share, or what are we doing? Okay.
I'm going to be sharing my screen.
Okay, good.
All right. So we read ADHD and Me by Blake E.S. Taylor. And we kind of split it up into 4 different sections because it's very chapter based. Sorry about that. It's very chapter based. Oh my god. Okay.
Welcome to my life.
So yeah.
Alright, so I did the first 3 chapters in the introduction.
They can't hear you. Why is that happening?
Now, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. So, I did the introduction, the first 3 chapters. The biggest thing that I got out of the introduction was a story about his first babysitter named Gloria, and he refused to like stay still and sit down to eat the dinner that she made for him. And she got so frustrated to the point that she took a bungee cord and tied him to a chair at the dinner table, which you can probably see why that's a problem. Bungee cording an 8-year-old to a chair at a dinner table is not really the best way to handle this situation. And she made him sit there until he ate his entire dinner, when he just wanted to get up and keep playing because he thought that was like more important for him to do. And he ends the introduction with like the character list of everyone else that's in the story. It's probably about 10 people long. His mother is on there twice with his nickname for her and her actual name.
Interesting.
The second chapter is about his 10th grade English final, which he's very nervous about. And the morning that he gets up for this final, he forgets to take his medicine because he's nervous, which causes him to worry about it the entire car ride to school. And he gets there and he takes a seat by the window, hoping the fresh air is going to help him stay focused. And as soon as the exam starts, the younger kids go out for recess and they're yelling and screaming, and he can hardly pay attention. Even after they close the window, like he said, small sounds are still coming through. And the decorations in the classroom, very bright, very eye-catching, super colorful. And he doesn't get a chance to finish the entire essay. So when he turns it in, he says to the teacher, oh, he doesn't say, he says this the next day when he gets his grades back. He tells her, like, I'm really sorry. I studied very hard, but I forgot to take my medication. So I wasn't focused the entire time. And she thought he was just using this as an excuse. And she was like, oh, I've heard this a ton. There's really nothing you can do about it. And at the end of every chapter, he puts a few things there that helps, like, our recommendations or advice for people who have ADHD when something like this happens. One of the things that stood out to me was when you forget to take your medication and you have to be like in a room, don't have something that's too like distracting, like he said, with like the colorful posters everywhere and different things that he could easily be distracted by, but not in a room that's completely like white walled all four sides and there's just nothing to focus on, because then your imagination can go crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The second chapter is what the title is about. The title says, What I Learned from Lighting Fires at the Dinner Table. The second chapter actually has his sister lighting a cup of yogurt on fire at the dinner table. And he thinks to himself, like super impulsively, it's what this chapter is about, how can I make the fire bigger?
Mm-hmm.
And he immediately acted on it, went to the medicine cabinet, took a bottle of eyeglass cleaner, and pours the entire thing on the flaming yogurt cup. And it pretty much creates this huge ball of fire, burns half the dining room. And when the smoke alarms went off and the fire department came, his mom made him explain to the fire department why he did that. And he was having trouble like explaining it, because sometimes I don't know isn't enough of an answer. And his advice was like, think about it first, like make sure you get a full night of sleep, because that really helps like with your cognitive functions, and you get to like pay attention and think about your decisions. And this was the disorganized part that Jasmine was talking about. He spent like hours over the weekend studying for his math final. He goes in that Monday morning and he looks at the test, he opens it up, and he realizes there's pretty much no room for him to write down his like equations or his work for his problems. And he has this really big handwriting. He says a lot of people with ADHD have it, and it takes up a lot of room. It's really messy. He's more focused on writing everything down than being neat and concise with it. So when he's doing these, he makes a lot of small mistakes that he doesn't realize until later. But like he gets all the big equations right. He remembers all of that, but he makes like silly mistakes. Like he forgets to add instead of subtract or multiply. And his advice was like for staying organized was asking for help with people like who can help get organized and spend a little extra time like getting organized. Like if you have all your papers in the same binder for each class, it'll be easier rather than having one big binder with all your papers for all of your classes.
Okay, chapter 4, being hyperactive. In this chapter, Blake's hyperactivity got him into some trouble. His family was taking a trip to the museum to see the T-Rex exhibit. Blake was super excited for it, had so much built up energy, where it kind of like led him to be impatient, impulsive, and make really loud noises unintentionally. While he was super excited, walking through the museum, he kind of started pulling away from his family and ran off to find the T-Rex exhibit himself. And he actually started climbing through like all the ropes and climbed onto the platform.
And as soon as he did that, the alarm started sounding. Security came right away to take him like out of it. And this caused like a lot of commotion because he was super excited and had a lot of built up energy. The museum, like everyone there started like looking at him funny, like started blaming the mom, thinking she was being like irresponsible and didn't know really how to discipline her kid. For the whole rest of the time, like everyone, the security people had their eye on Blake. Yeah, so then when Blake, he was super curious about seeing the T-Rex, he puts all of his efforts into understanding and pursuing it. He kind of disregarded any self-control and didn't really think of any consequences that would happen. And some possible solutions for Blake that would help him is if he channels his energy into something constructive, such as community service, find a way to drain energy, like put his energy into something that is safe, and make sure to take all medications so that when he's out in public, he doesn't like act up or have commotions like he did at the museum. Chapter 5, having tics. In this chapter, Blake was up to present in his 6th grade history class. However, when he was in the middle of presenting, about like 2 minutes in, he felt a tic starting to come on. As he started feeling it, he tried to do everything he could to avoid and repress it, but it was kind of at no use. Blake ended up having multiple tics throughout the presentation. He was really hoping to use this presentation as like a pathway into showing his fellow classmates like what a good kid he is and his personality, but like because he did have these tics come on, it kind of made him feel defeated and like left him feeling different, and he kind of feels like his classmates view him differently now. Those with ADHD often face tics or Tourette's. Tics I read about are sudden, repetitive, involuntary movements and sounds. However, Tourette's is a condition that includes vocal tics. Blake faced a simple tic disorder that occurred when he got really nervous. So when he was up presenting, that's probably why his tics came on, because he was nervous in front of his classmates, a new teacher. Possible solutions Blake mentions would be to force yourself to stop the tic, which he tried and doesn't always necessarily work. One can actually delay and decrease the occurrence. Focus on something else. Blake finds exercising to help reduce his tics, and meditation, relaxing one's body and mind to help avoid tics. Chapter 6, being unpopular. Blake had finally thought he made one best friend, AK. However, AK has ended his friendship with Blake due to being influenced by other classmates and their opinions. So there was this one boy who thought Blake was kind of weird and different and strange. So the other kids started influencing AK, trying to be like, AK, look, if you hang out with him, you're going to be seen as different and weird as well. So that kind of made Blake lose his best friend, AK. Blake's mother was also worried because Blake was putting all of his eggs kind of in one basket and thought he only needed one friend. But sometimes like friends come and go. So this is kind of what happened with AK. He was influenced, stopped being friends with Blake. So then when it came for Blake's 10th birthday party, he needed to find other people if he wanted to pursue the simulated space shuttle. So he had to kind of step out of his comfort zone, I guess, a little more. And he invited 10 people, but they weren't considered his best friends. They were kind of just people that were friendly towards him in the classroom. So he found people to come, but AK still didn't show up. Blake often sometimes does not notice or understands nonverbal cues, which results in people thinking he would be rude or inconsiderate. ADHD behaviors made it hard to make friends. People view people with ADHD sometimes as different and unusual, just how AK's other classmate did. A piece of advice Blake gives to make friends with is to make friends with yourself first. Try your best to pay attention and stray away from interrupting others and trying to avoid
fidgeting. Did we lose Jacqueline? Did we lose everyone? Oh no.
That evidence to the principal in order to prove that they're being bullied. Often middle schoolers use verbal harassment because there is less evidence to be found. Making friends sometimes may be hard for one with ADHD. One may not be able to read people's expressions. They may struggle to wait one's turn, blurt out random answers, climb around and pull things away from others, which kind of makes kids with ADHD often easy prey for the bullies. So Blake finds that using humor to be helpful when facing bullies can help diffuse the situation and the bully. Sarcasm can also silence a bully, and it's also good to just try and stay away or avoid the bully and just be confident and utilize positive self-talk with oneself.
So, being isolated. So this chapter starts off with Blake. He's at home, and he's talking with his parents. And they tell him that they want him to go to the dance that was that night at school, and he knew about it before, but he didn't want to go. So in order for his parents to make him go, they made a deal with him that his dad would pull him out of PE class that day. So so that's what happened. So he went to PE, or sorry, he didn't go to PE, but his dad pulled him out, and that evening he went to the dance, and he ended up bringing a book about insects with him to read there because he didn't want to dance. So he just kind of parked himself in a corner, and people kept going up to him asking if he wanted to dance with them, both girls and boys and groups of people, and he rejected all of them. So he even tried to actually like sneak out, but there were teachers monitoring, so that didn't work out. But eventually, he wasn't supposed to stay like the whole time. He was supposed to stay only part of the time, but his dad ended up picking up Blake like right towards the end, and Blake was really upset because he wanted to leave as soon as possible. That's basically how the chapter ended, and he gave some advice. So he said that if you have social anxiety, you have to just put yourself out there and face the fears because they'll just keep getting worse if you don't. Yeah. So being misunderstood. So this is in preschool. He's in his class, and his kids, or the kids in the class, were making a ton of noise. And he didn't like that, so he just found a corner for himself, and he just started playing with some building blocks and stuff. And the teacher noticed that. She even asked him if he wanted to go play with the other kids, and he just said no. So the teacher ended up having some experts come in to observe him and see like what was going on. So he ended up being misdiagnosed as having autism and moved to another class. And those students in that class, some had certain physical impairments or mental impairments. So like a special ed class for preschool. And I mean, he was diagnosed properly with ADHD when he was 5, so that was like a little bit later. But he ended up getting an IEP through school, and he emphasized that it's extremely important to have one because it made all the difference in his success in school. And he also made a point to ask for something as long as it won't interfere with the learning of other classmates. Just ask from the teacher if you need a change in the classroom, and hopefully they can accommodate for that. Being blamed. So this was in first grade, and Blake was bored in his class, and so he ended up just throwing a pen at, I assume it was a teacher's desk. He didn't really specify, but it splattered ink all over the papers, and his teacher was, she punished him pretty severely. So she told him he can't go out for recess for a whole week. And when he decided to try to sneak out of the classroom that day to go to recess, she caught him, and she extended that punishment to a week and like 2 days or something. And so later in the week, when he was still in class, during recess, she brought him outside the classroom to one of those like one-stall bathrooms in the school, and there was a huge mess in there, and she blamed him for it. So even though he didn't do it, and he told her so, but she just didn't believe him, or was just making him clean it up anyway as punishment. So he cleaned it up, and she watched him clean it up. So based on those specific experiences and other experiences he had as well, he makes a clear statement that children with ADHD tend to be automatically blamed for something going wrong, even if they're not actually guilty for it. They're just kind of like, it just assumes that they did something. And so one of the solutions that he said that really stood out to me was, he said that being honest like all the time about these kinds of things, or just anything in general, honestly, is really important, because then, the authorities will know that you're not a liar. So you actually develop trust with them, and therefore are less likely to be misblamed for doing something. Being rigid. So this chapter starts off with Blake in PE class. He's running the mile, and he's one of the last people to finish it. He describes that his experience with it is, or just with like exercising in general, but for this particular experience of running the mile, it's very extreme with his what do you call it, like breathing and need for water. He just generally has a harder time with it physically, and therefore he didn't like it at all. And he naturally also doesn't like to try new things, and he says that that's part of having ADHD.
Interesting.
So his mom ends up forcing him to try working out at the gym, and she hired a personal trainer to guide him with that. And after trying it for a day with the personal trainer at the gym, he actually realized he enjoyed it. So he says for those kinds of situations, just be open-minded and get information about something new, and try it first before making any judgment about it, because you might actually find out that you'll like it. And this was actually it's good that his mom forced him to try it out, because he realized that exercising is really healthy, and he likes it. So he's happy that he tried it out.
So chapter 12, being disobedient. This is a pretty hefty chapter based off of the situation that Blake got himself into. So Blake and his friend Will decided to go sailing near the San Francisco Bay. The dock that they rented the boat from had a very specific list of rules just for the safety of their guests, to prevent sinking and ultimately hypothermia and getting swept out into the bay. Blake felt confident enough in his sailing abilities after attending sailing school for a few summers, so he decided to break one of the rules and leave the inlet and go into the bay. an attempt to get back without getting caught, Blake made a mistake in figuring out how to get back into the inlet. He took the wrong path and ended up in a dead end. They then got the boat stuck in a marshy area, and spiders started crawling onto the boat, and then that caused them to return hours after they were supposed to be back. He was banned from the dock forever after that, and his mom was very upset because she was very worried that he was missing. From this, Blake learned that rules are in place for a reason that someone might not think of at first. He thought that the rules were only for people who didn't have that much sailing experience, and he really thought that he was kind of above it because of his sailing experience, and he said that sometimes people with ADHD tend to think that the rules don't always apply to them. And he learned to ask questions about anything he might not be aware of, and to just follow the rules, at least for the most part. So chapter 13 is being discriminated against in 8th grade. Blake started applying to high schools in the Bay Area and had to go into interviews for them. As most people do, he became nervous, which, like we said before, caused him to have tics, like shaking his head. When he was meeting with the admissions interviewer, he felt like it was going well until he felt a tic coming on. He let it happen while the interviewer was looking down, but she ended up seeing it anyway as she started to look up. They both became very awkward and ended the interview almost immediately. The school asked for a diagnosis after Blake's ADHD. The school asked for a diagnosis of Blake's ADHD and asked if he actually had Tourette's syndrome. Even though he had been tested already for that and was very open about his ADHD in his original application. After that, they rejected him a few weeks later. Blake recommends finding a school environment or an environment where you can thrive just being who you are. He says that bias will always find its way into your life, but you can find a place where you can use ADHD to your advantage. Blake had teachers that assigned him projects that best suit him and his talents over his time in high school, where he did find a place to go to. And he said that if he went to that original high school, he probably would have had very different teachers. Taking control. So while Blake was on vacation one year, his mom and his sister and grandmother, they all took him to get a haircut. He was really hesitant at first, and he was almost screaming at them in the middle of the hair salon. But he was able to be convinced after a little persuading by the hairdresser. This haircut was the start of Blake taking control of his life. He got rid of his bowl cut, he got contacts to replace his glasses, and started working out a little after that. This change in his appearance boosted his confidence, and he became more social at school and ultimately got more involved with his school swim team as well. He has 5 suggestions for people with ADHD that are trying to take control of their life. Number 1, if something doesn't work, change it. 2, become more social. 3, participate in community activities. 4, find a way to express your creativity. And 5, find a job in the real world. And chapter 15 is the last chapter. He titled it Being Gifted. At 9 years old, Blake and his mom were assigning everyone in the family cars that best represent them. His mom thought she and his sister, Madison, were BMWs, while his dad was an Audi. And above all of them, she said that Blake was like a red Ferrari. What made Blake a red Ferrari was his inexhaustible energy and speed. She then said that driving a Ferrari takes great control, and one wrong move can cause their car to go out of control. Blake feels that having ADHD can bring great qualities. It can be very easy to lose control over it as a young child, but as you grow older, you can learn to manage it and make the best of it, just like a Ferrari. And instead of giving a suggestion at the end of this chapter, Blake listed some of the gifts that he finds of having ADHD, including intelligence, charm, a sense of humor, intense focus on your interests, great energy, multitasking, creativity, compassion and empathy, passion, trustworthiness, honesty, being adventurous, determination, and a love for nature and animals. And he leaves the book off with the last sentence on a very optimistic quote. He says, remember, ADHD is a gift that makes you different. And like the Ferrari, it makes you 1 in a million.
Good job. It was a lot of work, huh? So, questions? Anyone have questions? Anyone that wasn't in the group, ask a question, please. Da-da-da-dum. I'm not going to rescue you. Someone ask the question of this group. One question. Lexi.
So good job. I guess one thing that I'm confused about is like, he talks about, I forget what chapter it was, but like the being rigid.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's kind of surprising to me because like, you know, like I feel like the stereotype of ADHD is that they're really rambunctious and running around. So it just surprises me that like, I guess natural athleticism doesn't come to them. So does he speak a little on that or no?
So he doesn't mean rigid in terms of physical rigidness. He means like being rigid in not wanting to try new things or not being open to trying new things. So he just has like a routine and he's happy with it. Well, if he's happy with it, then he just won't want to change it. So yes, like he does have a huge abundance of energy. That's, the hyperactivity part, but the rigid part is more like a mental aspect, not like a physical aspect of ADHD.
I was interested by that too. That's not typically a characteristic of ADHD, but I could see it in some people. Remember that when we talk about disabilities, they're all different, right? So everyone's an individual within the disability. So that was interesting. The other thing I thought was interesting was about tics, because kids that have Tourette's and ADHD have comorbid conditions. So the tics are not necessarily associated with the ADHD, although medication sometimes creates the tics too. So that was interesting. Lexi.
I actually also found that interesting because my best friend, she was diagnosed with Tourette's first, and then like later on she was diagnosed with ADHD. So I didn't realize that like a lot of people had that. I just assumed it was just her.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. We should look at the connection between the percent of people that have ADHD that actually have tics or Tourette's even. That was interesting. There was something else that was interesting that was out of, I can't remember what it was. Something like that. It was really good. It kind of you guys kind of walked us through everything that I was saying before, right? As far as characteristics go, and you can see it. So now that you've heard that presentation and you've heard me begin to do the lecture on ADHD, now watch the movie and think about characteristics of ADHD. I challenge you to do that before Thursday, and then we can talk about it. What did you see? Sound good? All right, everyone knows what to do. I have gone over everything for the week, so you're not going to forget anything. I'm going to attempt to cut out the presentation part of this lecture and post it separately for everyone else to see. So we're good? All right, talk to you guys later. Have a good one.